Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Cast Track. We post an interview with an amazing Canadian each weekday for your daily inspiration. Today, I would like to introduce you to my friend, Corey Deacon. Corey was born in Brooks, Alberta, and I just learned was raised and hanging out in Sylvan Lake. So we probably have lots of friends in common. He has been married for just over 2 years. He is passionate about health, wellness, the outdoors, sports, and social connections. Of course, that has become much more apparent to him, especially now. We can understand. Corey and I have been recently introduced, and I was drawn to his perspective on brain and mental health. So excited to hear from him today. Friends, you'll find his full bio attached. Corey, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I'm so glad. May we start with the questions that I sent you this week?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Well, the first question is, what has been your biggest challenge in the last 2 months?
By far the isolation component has been the biggest challenge. I very used to being in, we have these platforms like Zoom, and we're doing a lot of telemedicine these days. I run a functional medicine clinic, and it's been that lack of presence. Even though we're able to see and hear each other, it's definitely different. Trying to work with clients over the phone and through video, it's a lot more challenging. So that has by far been the biggest challenge for myself.
I bet. I can understand that.
Yeah.
The second point was the top 3 things that you want to share with our audience today.
Yeah. So especially in these times, it's so important to keep in touch with people as best you can, whether it's through actual physical presence with physical distancing, whether it's even through these types of platforms, the more stimulus you can get, the better. So as a neuroscientist, we're always looking at the way the brain is organized, and what is the healthy way for a brain to wire? What does a brain need to wire properly, and to have all of its needs met on every level? Not just water and food, but some of our higher intellectual, social, emotional needs. So making sure those are met is incredibly important, which also requires you to be honest with people with how you feel. And asking for help when you need it. It's still there. It's so very important in these times when first of all, they're stressful. It's big change. There's a lot of unpredictability right now. There's something called the fight or flight reaction in the body, and actually recently we found that mammals have something called a freeze response as well, that can be measured in something called a polyvagal theory. So a lot of us are in this kind of freeze state where we don't know what to do, right? We don't know what to do with ourselves. And so it's really important to use this time that we have to connect deeper with everybody around us. The second thing I want to share right now, and you'll notice I'm outside, there's a method to my madness, is spend lots of time outdoors. You can still get outside safely. Be safe about it, and not be irresponsible about it. We of course want to follow the guidelines of not being in campgrounds and everything like that in provincial parks, as they're still closed, but just keeping a physical distance model. But get outside. We talk about the benefits of sunshine, and the benefits of the outdoors, but we really are starting to see the last 10 years of the research on that, and how incredibly important that is for mental health. So that's kind of the benefit of working from home, is I can pop my computer outside and sit here and talk to you, right? But the benefits of the light exposure you get, even if it is a bit of a cloudy day, on serotonin function, dopamine function, oxytocin function, all the function of a lot of the areas of our brain that are required for well-being, mental well-being, are huge. And the third thing that I want to let people know that's beneficial that they can be doing is movement. Any type of movement, walking, jogging, biking. If you can do movement and do it outside, it's a bonus, right? Because you're getting that outdoor time. that automatically is going to have a beneficial effect. And then you get endorphins, you get brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and all these proteins that actually help build new pathways in the brain. And this allows us to continue to thrive in a very emotionally challenging situation. So
Can you tell us a little bit more about your practice? What are some of the methods that you use for brain health?
yeah, so our methods involve specialized neuroimaging. What I've said for a long time now, and if you spent a lot of time reading research on mental health and concussion and just all the things that affect our brain, what you find is there's a lot of different things that affect the brain. And so I find that as practitioners and as humans, we can be biased very easily, and we can get subjective biases where we think one thing's affecting us. We're trying to figure out our symptoms and our history, and even as a practitioner, I'm looking at people and trying to figure out their histories, and I can get biased quite quickly as to what I think might be going on. And so we've developed a special model that utilizes quantitative EEG, which is the best at determining function of the brain. And so we get a map, similar to like an MRI or a CT. We get an idea of how all these different structures are functioning rather than just looking at how they are structurally. A lot of times we'll be structurally sound on an MRI or a CT, and we'll have major impairments in function, and it leads to all sorts of mental health concerns, anxiety, depression, cognitive impairment, sleep issues. If you have sleep issues, it will further compound the other problems for many reasons. And so we really want to find, okay, what is it that's affecting your brain, because there's so many different variables, and you can't determine based on symptoms alone. So we image the brain so we get a better idea of exactly how it's functioning, what is affecting it, and then we can pick the proper treatments, or we can triage and make the proper referral quickly. The other thing you can do with it is you can figure out what medications are going to be beneficial right out of the gate. So there's been a lot of good research lately that shows, and a few trials of this that show that it is actually whatever brain rhythm patterns you have is a better predictor of how you will respond to medications and which medications you'll respond well to than a diagnosis is. Really fascinating. So you look at diagnoses of fibromyalgia, depression, ADD, ADHD, and success to medication was more dependent on your brain rhythm than it was what your diagnosis was. So really interesting work on that on the neuroimaging side. So for us, we always say test, don't guess. We want to be looking at the organ that we're treating, and we want to be able to figure out, okay, what is it doing and why is it doing it? Because if we don't determine that, we're going to have a pretty big struggle hashing it out and figuring out what we're really dealing with, right? So we've seen a lot of people that come in with chronic pain, and their chronic pain is being related to, they think they're inflamed, they think they might have problems in their gut, and sometimes we do see that overlap, but other times we'll see that it's actually a PTSD pattern. And so when there's a PTSD pattern and you have chronic pain problems, you're going to pick the wrong treatment if you don't know that it's a PTSD problem. So this just allows us to take the guesswork out and really get down to the nitty gritty of why it's happening. So this is obviously a very complex process, but we've been able to refine it very well. So usually within about 3.5 to 4 hours, doing brain map, doing a medical record review, and looking into everything, we'll know exactly what's going on and why it's happening, and then how we can go about fixing it, or at least improving it. So because there again there's a lot of different treatments that you can do for the brain, even at home, like treatments like meditation and yoga and these types of things they're beneficial for almost everybody. But yeah, it just really allows us to help people decide what program is right for them. I have a great friend who always says to me, we're like snowflakes, Corey. Where everybody's different, everybody's needs are different, everybody's symptoms are a little bit different, And of course, we know the causes to those problems are different for everybody as well. So yeah, it's really allowed us to bring this personalized approach forward, especially for people that have had trouble. Either medications aren't working for them, they don't want to keep taking medications, or they don't want to take medications at all. And then they don't know where their options are, right? Is it natural medicine? Is it yoga? Is it psychology? What is it that I do? And you know, a lot of times people do need to do multiple types of therapies integrated together, but it's just a way that we can actually objectively figure out what that is, and then track it as well and make sure we're getting the changes that we want, because our conscious perception is actually a very small piece of what the brain is actually interpreting all the time. So we can actually say, okay, are we making movement? Are we moving in the right direction? And as long as we are, we know that that person is eventually going to get some good relief from the issues they're dealing with. So yeah,
I
that's
have
in
another
that.
follow-up question, and I'm sorry I haven't prepared you for this. It isn't until just now that I feel compelled to ask it.
Yeah.
What? So I've had some close friends who have been on prescription drugs, and it did not go well, and to the extreme of even committing suicide.
Okay.
What can you share with the audience right now if we know someone who is, what signs do we need to watch for? How can we, like, obviously if we're the patient or client and we're taking that medication, we may not even know that we're changing.
Right.
Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a big lag period in how the brain processes information, and integrates it into conscious reality. So we have an area at the top of the crown of the head called the polysensory cortex. And when we're hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, and feeling things in our body, so you know, me looking at you right now, listening to you, feeling the air and the temperature around me, you know, having different smells, all of that takes about 300 milliseconds to the onset of the stimulus until it integrates to my polysensory cortex. And that's when I become consciously aware of it. And I can only be consciously aware of about 2,000 gigabytes per second, which is about an MP3 song worth of information. But our entire brain, unconsciously, subconsciously, emotionally, our threat responses, everything else that's going on behind the scenes that we aren't consciously aware of, can be up to 1 to 2 terabytes per second, which are literally those hard drives that hold, you know, thousands of movies. That's how much we're encoding every second, but we're only aware of about a song's worth of that information. So we're very biased. Again, our brain is biased against how we feel, what we pay attention to. It also is our main function of the deep parts of our brain are to keep us safe, physically and emotionally. And so a lot of energy is spent keeping us safe. And sometimes to keep us safe, we need to disconnect or dissociate from how we're actually feeling. And so we don't even make the connection that we have a problem, right? Or we're consciously aware that it's becoming a problem. We're just kind of going through the day-to-day trying to remain safe. And this is significantly true for people with traumatic brain injuries, a history of traumatic brain injuries, even mild TBIs like whiplash injuries, and as well as people with trauma and PTSD and complex developmental trauma and stuff like that. So with the signs that you want to look for, first of all, are isolation. So there's a brilliant neuroscientist named Stephen Porges who figured out something called polyvagal theory, polyvagal model. Basically, we have 3 responses to stress. Typically, the first one is fight or flight. So when we're in a rest and digest state, we're calm. We actually move in and out of the rest and digest in the fight or flight through the day. Even as we deep breathe, if I take a big deep breath in, my heart rate actually comes up a little bit. I go into fight or flight, and then as I exhale, I trigger the vagus nerve, and everything calms down again. And so when you have a nice balance, you're good. And so the first stress response is you move into fight or flight. And your brain will interpret whether it needs to fight or whether it needs to run from a problem. And most people have heard of that fight or flight response. When you get stuck in that fight or flight response, there's a point where you actually go over into a division of the nervous system called dorsal vagal. And this is actually like a bad rest and digest state. It looks like we're calm, but we're actually moving into what's called faint or freeze or play dead response, is this dorsal vagal response. And the very first thing that we do is we isolate. So it's similar to if you're a gazelle on the Serengeti and a lion jumps out, right? Hopefully I can run faster than at least one person that I'm with, but we're running away from a lion, and we're in this flight mode, and then all of a sudden you get caught by the lion. You move into play dead, freeze, faint, right? You just lay there and hope that it leaves you alone so you can get away. And if you are able to get away and survive that, you don't go running back to your group that you were with before, because you're wounded. You actually have to just hope that you can heal. And so there's this whole process of dorsal vagal that allows us to kind of, it's the overwhelmed state. So as soon as we feel like we can't do it anymore, we're hopeless, we're helpless, we will socially withdraw, and we'll just have absolutely no drive to want to engage with anybody because it's too much work. Our body's basically going, no, we're too wounded. We have to deal with this. We can't deal with anything external anymore. So you usually see the first sign is they're obviously overwhelmed. They're not coping well. They're not able to deal with responsibilities well, and it leads to pretty quickly them starting to isolate. They don't want to connect. They don't want to talk to on the phone for very long. They don't want to make the effort to get out and go for a walk with you or anything else that you're trying to engage with them. Now those are some major early red flags. They might start noticing cognitive impairments, fatigue as well, and that's a sign that they're getting stuck in that dorsal vagal state. And the worst part about the dorsal vagal state is there's a mechanism that's called preparation for death. So when we're in that state, we're technically, our brain thinks that we're so severely wounded that it starts coming to grips with the idea of dying. And this is where people will have suicidal ideations, where their brain is literally saying, hey, it would be okay to not be here anymore, because then we won't be so overwhelmed and we won't feel like this. And so there's that mechanism that scares a lot of people, because they think, oh my God, my brain is like, I'm suicidal, right? And it's actually it's the symptom or the result of being stuck in this dorsal vagal state. And so that's kind of the stages that you'll go in. And so if you start noticing somebody isolating, it's really important. People oftentimes with very good intentions say, well, let me know if you need anything. Let me know if you need anything. You just need to assume those people need something.
Yeah.
And they're not going to want to accept necessarily, but you have to go that extra step of saying, what is it I need to do? What is it I can do for you, right? Okay, I'm just, you're not going to tell me what it is you need. You don't need anything. Okay, well, I'm just going to assume some things that you might need, and I'm going to get creative, and I'm just going to keep in touch with you, right? So, I've had friends in the past that I go for jogs, and I just go over to their house, and it's like they don't have a choice but to see me for a few minutes, right? And it's just to let them know I'm there for them, right? So yeah, those are the typical signs is social isolation, being overwhelmed, not being able to deal with responsibility, and that's when people need assistance, and hopefully you have your own self-care and you have enough resources built up to be able to give to them at that point, right? And that's where self-care component comes in, because if we don't have any gas in the tank, we're not going to be able to help anybody. We're actually going to push ourselves into that overwhelmed state. And this is where a lot of practitioners can get very easily. It's called practitioner burnout, is from giving, and then ignoring our own self-care. We have to have this balance between selfishness and selflessness, or we can get ourselves in trouble. So, once you're taken care of, then okay, now I can give. And you don't have to give a lot. Like I said, I mean, even a quick stop at their house for a 5-minute conversation. So that's really important, letting them know you're there. And it is still a process that they're going to need to go through themselves to get better, but at least knowing they have that support is really important. So
I'm so grateful for you sharing that with all of us today. So important, especially during this time. Thank you, Corey.
yeah, absolutely.
The final question I have is, what is your good news or legacy story that you'd like to share with everyone?
Yeah, so good news story. I was kind of, this question was interesting because I wasn't sure what where you're going with it, if it was like a worldwide thing, or was it like a personal success, or yeah, I figured it was fairly open-ended.
Yeah.
But I mean, I want to say, for one, with everything that's going on right now, to me, the brain has this unique way of perceiving reality in an imbalanced way. So we actually have the ability to do something called alpha and gamma asymmetry studies, and what it allows us to do. Oh, are you still
Yeah.
there? My internet connections
Yeah. I'm here. I
can.
can hear you.
Oh,
Are you
okay, perfect.
good?
So we with everything going on right now, because it is unfamiliar and it's scary for a lot of people, the brain starts perceiving reality in a biased way. And basically what happens is the right side of the prefrontal lobe is activating more than the left. And when that happens, when we're exposed to any type of stimulus around us and the right side activates, it actually says that it's negative. Okay, what we're experiencing is negative, it's stressful, we need to mount either a fight or a flight response against this, right? Well, unfortunately, none of us are avoiding this problem right now, right? And so some people are switching into the fight response, where they're getting angry about everything that's going on and frustrated, and then they sometimes swing the other way, and then we sometimes go into this freeze state where we can't make a decision anymore. And what we need to understand is our brain is improperly perceiving the current situation because of how our brains are wired. And so my first kind of good news story is things aren't all bad. There's so much good in this situation. It's just not easy to tap into sometimes when we get stuck in this threat response. And a lot of people haven't been taught, we aren't taught how to self-regulate very well usually, right? It's not something we learn in school. We don't get the benefit of that, right? So if we don't teach ourselves how to self-regulate and where our triggers are, we can easily get into this state, and now all of a sudden there's no good. Well, there's good absolutely everywhere. I mean, you think about the situation we're dealing with in the world, it's the first time ever that the world is all dealing with a similar problem all at once. It's actually uniting us more than ever.
Mm.
uh, and it's easy to get caught down the other way and look at how bad everything is. But the amount of time we have for our families, for our friends, right? And some people don't have a lot of time, but there's more flexibility as to where they work.
Yeah.
So I have a buddy who's been actually going back and staying in his trailer on his parents' property because he can work from anywhere now. And
Right.
so it's these so many amazing things. I mean, we're putting a garden in our house this year because we actually have the time to be at home, and on our breaks we can work on the garden. Just so many great opportunities right now, and so much good going on. And so I always tell people, like, remind yourselves when you get that, oh my God, everything's bad, that it's just a kind of a misperception or misconception the brain is forming to try to keep us safe. And sometimes we need to talk to ourselves, which makes you sound like you might be crazy, but you're not. Everybody does. Everybody has internal self-talk. It's really important to tell ourselves, no, this is just, we're safe, we're good, we're safe, right? We have what we need. This is just new, and it's unfamiliar, right? And reminding ourselves that, and then looking for that, okay, where's the good at here, right? So we're launching an online kind of commercial access to our neuroimaging, which is really exciting. And I'm spending a lot of time developing that out. And to us as a business, we're looking at how good is this, because we can tap into talent anywhere in the world. We don't need to bring people to Calgary to be here under our roof. We can tap into them from anywhere, right? And so these types of things, there's so much great opportunities now if you don't let your brain get you stuck on that negative misconception. So yeah, I mean, I would say overall everything's great. It's just it's different and it's unfamiliar. So
Oh, I'm so glad you shared that too. Admittedly, it's not always, I'm not all rainbows and unicorns right now. So I really appreciate what's going on in my brain.
There's a amazing doctor named Dr. John DeMartini, and he does something called the breakthrough experience, and just he has a lot of free resources on his website, and you can see how your life is always in balance when you look at it holistically and objectively. It's always in perfect balance, and you're not always going to be rainbows and butterflies, but you know that eventually you're gonna get out of that threat response issue. And anybody having trouble with it, again, I always say there's lots of different types of therapies. Just reach out to somebody. I know you're with the mental health collaborative, amazing. I mean, there's so many different people you'll be able to connect to that can help you with that, if you're finding trouble with it right now. So
Thank you, Corey. Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate your time.
thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, everybody, that was Dr. Corey Deacon. Now you can see why we love him. So glad he joined us. Welcome back to Cast Tracks, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.